The condition is really crazy condition.
And that shouldn't give away the whole secret to professional windsurfing.
Matteo Iachino giving Antoine Albo a run for his money. Here we go. Woo! What a finish.
The guy is kind of talking bullshit.
The team's just got to work a little harder.
Welcome to the Windsurfing Podcast. Back again for episode 26. Well, I say the Windsurfing Podcast. This is the Windsurfing Podcast with a difference because we have a new host. Yes, don't worry. Maciek Rakowski will be back. He's at the moment, he's off training and he's building up some podcasts. So you guys get to listen to them one after another. Keith de Boer has already been ticked off the list and we have a plenty more coming. So what have I got for you this week? Well, we have got a new podcast which is out there and it's about men's mental health. It was set up by Sandy Clunas, ex-Vasiliki, Club Vass. And yeah, this one has got a windsurfing theme to it. So we thought, hang on a minute, let's put it on the Windsurfing Podcast. Let's put it out to a few of you guys who like the podcast and maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you'll find something interesting in this one. So who have we got? Well, we've got another Club Vass boy. We have got Max Rowe. Yes, and Sandy talks to Max about his first, experience as a pro and being a pro rider. He talks about his cancer scare and, the craziness that went with that. He talks about baldness, yes, hair loss. I definitely listened to this one. And he also talks about being a dad for the first time. It's an interesting podcast. And without further ado, let's go over to Sandy.
Hello, welcome back to the next episode of the After Hours Lounge. This is my last episode of 2020. I actually haven't recorded an episode in a couple of weeks, so I've been really excited about this one. Another reason I am really excited about this one is I have my very good friend, professional windsurfer and all-round legend. If you've ever been to Vasiliki, or even if you're just a windsurfer in the UK in general, you will have heard of him. I am stoked to be joined by the Max Rowe. Max, thank you so much for coming on. You've actually
Thanks for having me.
Oh, mate, it's a pleasure. You've actually been on my list ever since I started this podcast, but we'll get into it later, but you've obviously just had a child at the beginning of this year. And
we've timed it well, I think. Yeah.
So I messaged you a couple of weeks ago and I was like, look, I know it's been long enough now. Let's lay it down. So I'm really...
You still might hear some screaming coming from the other room, but...
Yeah, you'll have to... mute her. You've had to soundproof the walls. But yeah, no, I've been really, really intrigued to talk to you. Actually, oddly enough, considering what a kind of passionate windsurfer I am, and that industry is very much where I've come from. I've not actually. I think Adam Sims, our mutual friend, he's the only other kind of windsurfer I've had on to talk about it. So one of the big reasons I wanted to get you on is to kind of talk about that. So obviously we know each other very well, but sort of introduce yourself to the listeners, who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so pretty much started my journey into windsurfing started back in England, where I've grown up in Colchester and Essex. My dad got me into it. I was always like skating and mountain biking when I was younger and stuff, and then actually, I always tell this story with how I got into it because it was quite like a defining moment. But I had this option to go windsurfing with my dad or go mountain biking with my mates one day. And I was kind of getting into windsurfing, but it was more about like doing stuff with my mates still. And it was still a bit something my dad did. And I had this chance and I went mountain biking with my mates and broke my leg quite badly, like proper fib foot at 90 degrees. And after that, we couldn't go on the holiday we wanted to that winter. So my dad was, I would go on a windsurfing holiday, and we ended up going to Club Vass. And that was when I was like, I think I would have been like 16. Yeah, 16. So went for the first time then. And then that was kind of my intro. Like that's when I really got like the bug of windsurfing and saw what freestyle windsurfing was all about. And kind of was quite tunnel vision from then on, really, that I wanted to pursue like a career in windsurfing.
Yeah. Did you obviously after that you sort of started learning and things? Did you start learning back in the UK or was it just sort of holiday stuff? Like, did you go down the whole like Team 15, which is the sort of early children's intro into eventually becoming, joining the Olympics? Did you?
I was already doing all of that stuff, so I was kind of like still quite into the windsurfing like before that. But yeah, I mean, if I had the choice, it was still like doing stuff with my mates, like sometimes over going windsurfing with my dad, if you like, and that kind of all changed after that accident. And then just the following summer really got into it, with the focus being that we were going on this is the first time we'd been on a windsurfing holiday. All my windsurfing before that had been in the UK. So
What did you? I always find this with, talented people. Like, was there like a real light bulb moment where you were like, oh mate, I'm getting good really quickly compared to everyone else? Like, I know you were kind of there in the golden days of Club Vass, where I think, did you start working there when you were 18? But was there a kind of moment? Maybe I'm skipping 2 steps ahead, but was there a bit of a moment where you were like, oh, I'm getting quite good at this?
There's definitely like a few years, so further down the line, because back then I was kind of still quite when I first went to Club Vass, just quite basic level really.
Yeah.
But then I did learn to Vulcan the year later on my flying fish course when I would have been 18, and then my first season when I was 18 as well, and there was like a ridiculously high level there then. I mean, it was you've got Bubble, like already a tour veteran on the PWA, Simon Hurry, who was like easily like Bubble's level as well, like not as successful in competition, and then you had to also Colin, Marco, Ollie, a lot of like really top sailors. So it's kind of quite I don't know if I had like a light bulb moment where I was getting quite felt like I was getting good, but the guys were like really encouraging me, and they took like a real interest. And obviously as I got better, they were like they definitely did their part in like it was like more encouragement from them as well. But I did have a moment, maybe not a moment, but I kind of thought, wow, learning these moves, but you never know when it's going to stop, if you're going to hit a wall or anything. But I don't think I really like, I don't know. I was just, like I mentioned before, I kind of always had this tunnel vision, whereas that was what I wanted to do. So I didn't have a lot of doubts, or back then it was just like, when
you're younger, you don't have like the sort of, you don't have the history of like failure, I guess, when you're younger, do you? So you don't necessarily have that lack of confidence or second guessing yourself, or not even with windsurfing, because it is, an extreme sport. You don't have that self-preservation either of like, oh, I don't know if I want to learn that because it's a bit scary. When you're kind of 19, you're like, no, I'm just going to go all into it. I think I've heard a story of, was it Colin or someone, they wouldn't let you come in until you'd landed a forward or something like that. They would literally.
I think it was, I'd done a few moves before the loop, and it was kind of time. That was Ollie, I think, shouting at me, calling me a fucking pussy, chasing me in the boat.
But good strong Club Vass encouragement there. But it obviously works. And
I think it's when you're younger as well. It wasn't like make or break. Like I was just having fun, really. Like at the end of the day, I was just doing seasons and learning new windsurf moves. Probably you put a lot less pressure on yourself when you're that age, because it didn't need to be a career. It didn't need to be anything. It was just like having a laugh, and I wanted to travel and I wanted to go windsurfing, and it wasn't really like it wasn't really too big a deal, so.
And I guess like at that time, or even for my kind of generation of sort of Club Vass as well, it's always produced like other than like a couple of the other guys like Adam Sims and stuff like that, it's always produced the kind of next sort of UK freestyle world tour talents, really, hasn't it? So I guess you having those guys, and then you being in all these amazing places, having Colin and especially I think you and Bubble were always the kind of, you were the two of that sort of generation, weren't you, that were going off and competing together. So when was your...
it was kind of like footsteps to follow, and it was always like someone had done it before, so you were kind of joining in with, I was just joining in with what Bubble was doing, really. So
and then what was the did you go around, how did you kind of have to get a wild card for that first event, and then were you quite nervous for that after everything we sort of just said about you just enjoying it? Were you, when you eventually got into starting competing, were you like, oh, I better start taking this seriously, or did you just sort of keep going, no, I'm just gonna see how it goes?
I think first year not a lot of pressure, so didn't really feel any of that then. Like I got a wild card for the first event in Austria, and my first ever heat on the PWA was against Bubble.
Oh, nice.
Enough, and he beat me. 5-7 weather, freezing cold, northerly winds in Poddersdorf, and yeah, but then my second, I can't remember, we had a few events. We had an event in Lanzarote that year as well, and already starting to feel less pressure. And then I had a bit of a breakthrough moment that year in Fuerteventura. I came 11th, which is still like one of the results I'd be the most proud of, because it was, yeah, it wasn't a lot of pressure on me, and it just like, man, everything just happened. It was my first ever time there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely something I look back on, but that was with really little pressure then, you know, and not really taking it desperately seriously. I remember being in the Carper pretty late with Bubble and Adam Sims potentially as well. Maybe Simsy wasn't competing that year, but yeah, I had Davy Sheffers the next morning. So I kind of like almost in my head written it off, because there was all these like real superstar up and coming kids. I wasn't really like in the focus at all, and had quite a late night, but then managed to beat him the next morning early on, and had like a bit of a steam, like running through that double, did like 4 or 5 heats or something, and got up to like 9th, I think. So yeah, that year definitely not too much pressure or taking it too seriously. I think I always edged on the side of, like, looking back at it now, probably never really taking it as seriously as I could have done, but I know myself that I would have got demotivated with it as well if it wasn't that much fun. So yeah, I always try to keep like the fun element in it, but I definitely felt like more pressure with it in the later years, and certain events as well, because we always seem to go back to the same tour stop. So we'd have this routine of being in like Austria, Fuerteventura, Silt as pretty much the pattern. But I mean, back then it was a little bit more diverse, and we had some really exciting years mixed in then as well, where we ended up in the Caribbean and in Vietnam, and events in France, and indoor events in Poland and stuff. But yeah, the events where I'd like compete a lot, like in Austria, I ended up like, really struggling there with like the anxiety when you never know when it's going to be windy. Like in Fuerteventura, you can wake up and you know you're going to sail a heat that morning. Whereas, and it's a completely different ball game in Austria when there's a lot of distractions there anyway, because it is a bit of a party event.
Yeah.
So you've always like tipping that, for trying to find a balance there between enjoying yourself and being prepared for the competition. And then the fact that it kind of just felt like it could get windy at any moment, and having a few close calls. So I always used to get like, feel a lot of pressure in Austria, or just like anxiety. It was just a bit tough really. And also in Silt was a lot harder because it was like multi-disciplined event. So you never know. You wake up one morning, like I'd often sleep in the van in the car park. It's pretty cold. You wake up and you know it's howling when you're sleeping in the van. Yeah. And you go down and you just wake up every time it's windy, and you're thinking, right, we're going to be competing, and you never know, like, oh, we're doing slalom, we're doing wave, or we're going to run the women first. And so those events would play harder in my mind, where it wasn't kind of like set that we're just doing a freestyle competition and that's what we're going to do. But overall, I definitely saw more like the fun side of it. It's funny, like when we were having that chat before, you said it seemed like maybe I was more like one of the professional guys, but in my mind, I was definitely more one of the guys that was having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult for me because I've, in those earlier years, certainly we didn't really know each other. We first sort of became friends around sort of 2013, and that was when, to me, that was when you were really like hitting your stride as a pro. That was sort of 2 or 3 years in. You'd just been signed, or you'd been on Northern Fanatic for a year or two by then. But that was when you were really at a professional level. And I remember, seeing, and then obviously as I've got to know you, I just remember thinking, you, especially when we used to see you sail in Vass, you're like, oh, he's literally just doing a heat. And then you say you get 40 minutes to windsurf on your time off in Vass when we worked there, and you'd go and we'd just watch you and you'd do the same moves and you'd do it. And this is not, saying anything bad, but you do that and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. And then you'd go to Fuerteventura or any of these events and we'd watch you and we're like, oh, he's just done what he did before, Yeah. So you could always, I guess, maybe you've always had that switch side rather than, other athletes that maybe do kind of, take it full serious. And I remember you telling stories of, guys going to bed at, 6 o'clock and right, I've got to get a full night's sleep and all this. But if anything, I think that makes you more stressed and more anxious because you just, like you said, you just put so much pressure on yourself. Whereas maybe that's why you kind of looked so professional and chilled out, is because you were looking at it as a, actually, I'm just going to go out and windsurf and do something that I love doing, and hopefully come out well,
No, definitely. It was always a bit of that, and I was always I tried it the other way as well. Like being a bit more serious, and like, oh, well, I won't have a beer the night before the event and see how that affects me. But you end up just lying in bed, like nervous rather than just chilling out, and that didn't work for me. Not saying then I needed like 5 beers to go to sleep, but it's just like keeping up with a normal routine. But no, it's funny you mentioned like the North Fanatic years, because those are probably when I felt the most pressure.
Yeah, I bet. That's what I wanted to get onto. Yeah,
you're dealing with like a lot more stuff within the team, because when I first got the deals and got sponsored and stuff, you're just, it's so grateful for any support that you get, and obviously it changed like the landscape for me completely once I started getting paid by windsurf brands to actually do it as well. Like freed up those don't have to go home and work in a restaurant all winter to afford like a little trip before Vass and stuff. And then you obviously want to keep that going, so there's like the inside the team politics, whereas where you need a finish in relation to other guys that are in the same team as you at the events as well. So felt a lot of more pressure in those days, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then that's kind of what I want to get to, because those of you listening that do windsurf or know windsurfer, you'll know it's a fairly small industry, but it is still an industry. There are still pro athletes and like yourself, that do get paid and make a living from it. They don't, you get these national deals and people say they're sponsored and they go, right, well actually they're just giving you 200 quid off some gear, but like you said, you were getting paid. They were flying you out to Maui every year for photo shoots, things like that. I guess. What was there a kind of, you've said there was a bit of pressure, but were you also a bit like, oh, I fucking made it here, I've done it, or did that pressure kind of always override it?
No, I definitely took the time to enjoy it. I'd say as well still. Yeah, I did, like especially when the Maui trips first started coming about, because that's like a dream. I still remember the moment I got the first email where I was kind of like asking the North Fanatic guys like what, I was already on an equipment deal, and like, what's up for I was messaging with Craig, the Fanatic brand manager, like, what's the kind of next year looking like for me? I kind of could do with a bit more gear. And he's like, oh, look, actually, we want to start supporting you properly. We've given you money if you go to events, and we want to bring you out to Maui. And I just remember like the stoke then as well was, very high.
Yeah.
Great feeling.
Yeah, mate. It must be so cool. It must be, it in kind of intrinsically in yourself, it must make you pretty proud, because it's, that's basically all on your achievements, like physically, that you've built that completely for yourself. It's not like running a business or anything like that. It's literally your kind of personal brand, and you've built it to a level where a business goes, right, actually, we're going to spend, the best part of thousands of dollars to go, right, we're going to fly you out to Maui. And like how you used to go for quite a while, didn't you? Because didn't you actually got quite into the, the gear development side as well as, so every year they do the photo shoots in Maui, but you used to go either side, didn't you? And sort of,
started off like the first opportunity I got to go, I was like, you get a set amount for the trip. It's not going to cover 6 weeks in Maui, but it will cover your flights and some car rental. But I was kind of like, of course, tied it in with the opportunity to go there for a bit longer. And it was such a good shout to do it, because it did give me the opportunity to meet Kai Hop, the North Sail designer, and get to know him a little bit. And then we it was when like North were first developing the freestyle, like a proper freestyle sail as well.
Yeah.
Like before that, Goito was a bit frustrated with what he had, and he was there in Maui as well, and he was obviously he knows what he wants, but there was a bit of a communication gap there between him and Kai, who was also not especially a great communicator. So I kind of like just slotted into this role there where I was like useful, because I was kind of in between Goito and Kai and trying to just get the best out of the sail and what he wanted from it, really.
Yeah.
So it worked out well, like staying out there for a bit longer, and then that led on to more opportunities where I got to be more involved with the testing, and then Kai would support me to come out there in the autumn months.
Yeah.
So I keep back saying fall, because that's what they all used to call it, the Americanism there.
Yeah,
go out in the fall.
Yeah.
And he'd support me for that, really, to come out and help him with the testing and with the feedback. And Goito would be there sometimes, he wouldn't. yeah, those were amazing years as well. The times when I was doing like, it was like over 3 months a year normally out there, kind of like in 2 trips. So yeah.
Always you like, this is something I really wanted to get into with you, because like we said, I sort of looked at your stats the other day, and you basically spent, you spent 3 or 4 years consecutively within the top 15. So really good results. I mean, how big was the fleet then? Was it 42?
Yeah, it's always been around 42, but like over the course of the year, you mainly only have like 30 people that would attend every event, so would have a fair ranking. Like a lot of the years when you've only got 3 events, every result stands, or as soon as you've got 4, you get a discard. But yeah, it's still like 30 plus guys.
Yeah. So I mean, you spent, you were like 11th, sort of 14th, 15th, that kind of thing. So, but you never quite got into that kind of real sort of world title contention, top 5 sort of thing. But from me looking at it, you always seem to attract kind of outside industry sponsors, which is quite a rare thing in windsurfing. But you were sponsored by the Cat phones for a little while. I think you were sponsored by like a sort of skincare brand for a while. I think there was a couple of others, but I can't sort of pull them out of my hat. But and even then within the industry as well, you were always, you got a lot of magazine covers, you got a lot of media coverage. I said you kind of commentated some of the events when you weren't competing yourself. Was that something that you always kind of wanted to do as well? Like, did you kind of have in your mind, like, I'd quite like to be, I know everyone, wants to be famous, but did you kind of want to be that kind of poster boy, or did it just fall into it? I mean, it sounds like you've got a very open mind and, with the opportunities in Maui and things, but was that a kind of deliberate thing?
I guess it was all like working towards like, you do start to treat it more like a job, even though I was having a lot of fun with it. And you want to like put yourself out there and put yourself into situations and networking and stuff. And a lot of that stuff came about very naturally. I definitely went down the route of like putting my proposals into bigger brands and stuff and that, but actually a lot of the stuff that came out was just through being involved, and then commentating in the booth. Because if you feel like you get knocked out of an event and you've got North Fanatic paying for you to be there and paying for you to do the tour that year, that you can at least offer a little bit extra as well from doing the commentary. So it's just about trying to give yourself like like another element rather than just the competing side, really. I mean, like you said, I never really cracked the top 10, although I had a couple of results up like at the tail end of the top 10. But yeah, it's funny thinking. I think I perhaps enjoyed the victories too much on the way, that I'd then kind of be content where I got to my standard kind of setting. I don't really know it's interesting now, like being in a position to kind of almost like look back on it. But I definitely feel like I enjoyed the little victories, like, because you're winning a heat in the windsurfing format, you're like head on head with someone else. So you've got that each one that you win and you jumping up a place is a victory. It's not kind of like you go out and you do a display and then you're marked accordingly, So you do get the reward of like winning. And but for me, maybe I enjoyed the getting to my kind of benchmark too much, that I then kind of take my eye off the ball or not really push it enough to beat kind of the guys at the next level, really. But I think all of that stuff and the which led to like more support from out the industry was just from like, just being motivated to kind of get myself out there. I don't know if it's about being famous or but it was kind of just trying to get the best, and so I could carry on getting those kind of deals just so I could make it last as long as possible, really.
I think that's it. Any kind of and something I've realized, I remember we always thought, oh, it's windsurfing and, it's a small industry, but actually you look at pretty much any pro sport or any, pro athletes within a sport, there's the roof isn't very high. It can literally end like this, whether it's injury or, just the next guy coming through and just being a lot better than you, so I think you, in my brain looking at it, I mean, I remember, I was a far, far lower level than you, but I had a few kind of sponsors back in the day and things. And I certainly remember kind of taking a leaf out of your book of just being like, right, well, just try and add as many strings to your bow as possible. And, things like, commentating, like I never actually thought about that, of actually Northern Fanatic are paying you to be there. So you might as well make yourself slightly useful at the end of the day. I mean, I do this podcast now. I love just sitting and chatting shit, at the end of the day, it's quite fun. It
was a lot of fun. And, at the end of the day, the guys also in the office at Baldness are sitting there watching the event as well, and who are they listening to talking about it? And then you're on their mind, And I did have a lot of fun in the commentary booth. I've had the pleasure of doing a bit with Ben Profit as well, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Me and Bubble covered quite a few events. And Phil, so it's always pretty good times.
Yeah, exactly.
One shocker actually in the commentary booth where I was not really volunteered. I would been roped into doing it in Poland. I don't know if you remember the indoor event that happened there.
Yeah.
I didn't qualify for the main event because it was so hard to go switch in time to do something, and I'm not that good on like starboard tack, especially not being propelled by a fan in a swimming pool, it turns out. Sure. So I couldn't land anything on starboard. Like, had a few good runs, nearly qualified with what I did on port.
Yeah.
So I didn't qualify for the main event, and you're in like the Polish, in like the national stadium where they hosted like the European football competition. It's a massive venue, and I got asked if I would assist the Polish commentator in there, and it was such like you're in this like room, like a studio room up on the top of the stadium, like you can't hear the fans, you can't hear the windsurfing or anything, and you're like looking down at it on like a really funny angle. And this guy was so awkward and weird, and I really I ended up, it was really hard to like get excited about what was happening. And I took so much grief from I remember Ricardo the next day, like, oh, you could have got a little bit like more excited about that back loop that I went for, man. Like when he was watching like the replays and stuff, and it turned into like this fiasco where it even got like slated in the PWA like AGM meeting at the end of the year, like how bad the commentary was. I wasn't like the main focus of it, but I was just like this tag along for the event. So that was the only time I really wished I hadn't done it.
Yeah, it's a pretty weird situation to be in, though, I guess, being so far away from your normal like habitat of an event, being in a stadium. If anyone's not seen indoor windsurfing, type it into YouTube. It's pretty cool, but it's pretty weird as well.
It is. It was more, and this guy I was with, he didn't have a clue about windsurfing and was like really enthusiastic at the wrong moments. It was just like completely threw me. There's probably some funny snippets online somewhere.
Yeah, mate, I'll have to go back and I don't remember.
I'm glad you haven't seen it, to be honest. I heard about it.
thought I was gonna ream you out on this. And then what's it kind of like for you sort of looking back on it now? I mean, I don't know, obviously, as I said, you've got a baby girl now, and potentially your kind of situation has changed. I mean, we'll get into that later, but are you kind of planning? And they've changed the format as well. I don't know what they're going to do after this year, because obviously there's not been a tour, but what's it kind of like? I mean, you had a very, very big sort of sponsorship change in 2016. And all that stuff, what's it like kind of dealing with that, essentially, I don't want to say being dropped, but, kind of becoming a free agent and going back on the market. What's that like?
That was a real hard point, actually, when I lost the deal with North Fanatic, because it was like a couple of things like piled up on top of each other. And, but the way it came about was like the most disappointing thing. And I've had like comments from people like both ways, that either like other riders being like fair play for coming out and saying what I said about it. I didn't just let it go that it was an amicable split. I came out and said my feelings on it, and other people saying that, you don't want to close any doors kind of thing.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, I'm grateful for my reaction, but it was a tough time. It was like I was being supported, but I was always, it's always tough. You never know if you're always on a 1 year deal with them pretty much. So I never knew if I was going to get a deal for the next year, but they'd always assured me that you're going to find out in kind of July, August, if you haven't got a deal for the following year. Now, I had an all right year on tour, wasn't great. I was lined up to go to Maui to do the work on developing the sails. And then I'm like, it's like a week before I'm going to Maui. My flights are all booked. I've got accommodation booked.
Yeah.
Then I get an email. So this is like already like well into October. And they're like, oh, sorry, we can't support you anymore,
Yeah.
Like just like completely out the blue, like no indication whatsoever running up to it. Yeah. And having been also in the main guy from North's office, like earlier on in the year in like March or April, and he'd kind of he'd up my deal because he was grateful for the testing work and kind of assured me that they were going to sponsor me for another year, you know. So it was kind of course, it felt a bit harsh, and it was a tough pill to swallow, really.
Yeah, I bet.
I ended up going to Maui anyway, had a week on the water, and then broke my ankle.
Yeah. Oh man.
And so then I'm looking for a sponsor whilst I'm on crutches, sat in bed.
Yeah.
Saw out the trip in Maui, which was great, but yeah, it was tough. And then I'm coming back, like, and yeah, of course you can't find something like that overnight. And I was kind of so convinced that, I don't know, maybe like narrow-mindedly, I kind of saw myself on North and Fanatic forever, you know, because of and like how it was more than like just being sponsored by the brand. I was in there with Kai, the designer, and I kind of saw it as being like, I'd be on North forever, you know. I didn't really like even think about joining another brand or looking for other sponsors or having other options. So I hadn't really like done the networking that I'd done like 5 years before to get into a position where I knew quite a lot of guys in other brands. So I was really a bit lost really for a while. But actually turned really good. And thankfully, like Simmer came along, and I mean, at that age then I was like 26, 27. So to then they came about with a 3-year deal, which was pretty similar to what I was getting from North Fanatic. So it all worked out pretty well in the end. But I'd say even though I did have another deal come about, it definitely like knocked my confidence still. It was definitely a big blow.
Yeah. Did that kind of make you, I guess it's difficult because it's kind of everything you've done has been, you know, with the windsurfing and things. It's not like you didn't go to uni, you know, didn't go to uni in the meantime and that sort of stuff. So, you know, and I guess because you've done all the extracurricular stuff, you're kind of like, well, I'm building a career here. And then you did go on to Simmer, and you know, you've developed the whole freestyle line for Simmer as well. So you still got to do all that stuff. But yeah, it must have caused quite a lot of anxiety, especially with an injury as well, of going, actually, if I do get signed by a new brand, I can't, you know, it's not like I can go and get the new gear and get them a load of media or, you know, start performing for them straight away. How did you kind of cope with that sort of, you know, or if there was any anxiety, but how did you kind of deal with that?
I don't know. I was pretty angry, to be honest, like really angry about it. Like, you know me, I can get a bit of a rage on occasionally if something bothers me, but normally it's quite short-lived. I'd say this was like pent up for a lot of time. I held a lot of like resentment towards the guys at North, especially about it. Like not particular Kai Hoff, but the guys that had assured me otherwise and told me that I would get notified in time. And yeah, at the end of the day, like with Fanatic, I feel like they were I hadn't had as many promises from them. But I definitely was really angry about it. And yeah, I think, because at that age as well, like it's quite different to when you're like 21, 22 coming into the freestyle fleet. You know, I was already one of the older guys. Like there's a lot of guys around my age, but you're looking at it also like if you don't get a deal for the next year, that's it, you know. And then your lifestyle's over, and then you haven't been to uni and you haven't done all this stuff, and then like just how drastic a lifestyle change you're potentially looking at, because I'm still really excited and looking forward to traveling and being involved with the development of windsurfing stuff. And of course it was a cool opportunity in the end to do the stuff with Simmer. I mean, it was always a bit different, you know, the stuff I was doing with North, where you're like on location and testing. It's quite different to like getting shipped sales and giving feedback. So but yeah, no, great. Looking back now, like grateful something came out of it, and probably, and still don't regret my public outrage about like the way in which it happened with North Fanatic, really.
No, I mean, I remember reading it. I think we were in Cape Town when you put it out, and I remember reading it, and you know, we were all like, that all seems very reasonable. And I think there is a lack of that, and you know, it would be interesting to talk to you know, kind of other windsurfers, especially, you know, in terms of windsurfing, freestyle is definitely the smallest discipline and the one with the least amount of support. So I can imagine it's something that's always frustrated me, is that everyone always toes the line so much because they're so worried about losing their livelihood. So I remember all of us thinking it was pretty refreshing for you to be like, actually, no, fuck you, you know, without saying fuck you, if you know what I mean. You know,
well, don't worry. From the emails I got from the guys at North, they definitely took it as a fuck you. So it got the message across.
What was can you give me an exclusive? What was the deal? Were they threatening to sue or something?
No, nothing like that. Just message from the guy at the time at North, who I hadn't dealt with for that long there. I had a really good relationship with the other team boss, but this guy had been there for a year, and just like, sorry how I feel like a victim and all of this stuff. And I didn't even bother replying to him because I didn't think I needed to really. Like the fact that he'd come out and emailed me like that again afterwards just proved my point about the whole situation, really.
Yeah.
Because there was no understanding from their side in his email anyway. But then actually I did hear from the guys that I knew within the Fnatic team at the time that they had actually spoke about, well, look, how do we avoid making people feel like this again? You know?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. There is a little bit of a culture of like, actually, maybe we did sort of mess up a little bit, because it's difficult. It's so easy for a brand. And I mean, maybe this doesn't necessarily apply to windsurfing as much because it's a smaller sport, but it must be so easy for a brand to be like, yeah, cut him. We've got to get rid of him. We've got to think about budget. But I guess, this is maybe a bit of a naive thing to say, but they don't realize, it's literally your livelihood. It's literally your job, your whole plan for the next 12 months. I find it mad that they did that only 1 year. That's so insecure, isn't it? It must be so nerve wracking, especially in terms of competing. I definitely wouldn't be able to handle it. Maybe it's good that I'm not that good at windsurfing. Yeah, I think I'd absolutely crumble. It must be, really, really nerve wracking. But I mean, especially for you to experience that, considering the amount of, kind of professionalism you put into it. And I see a lot of the content or whatever, interesting to get your thoughts on kind of how social media is playing a role now in sort of being a pro athlete as well. I mean, it's, I listen to the WSL podcast, they talk about it a lot and all this of, is it as good as it used to be where, before it was all about magazines and kind of longer form, videos and stuff. Like I remember in 2012 or something like that, before we knew each other, and your kind of 5-minute video from Brazil coming out, and it was like, it like broke the windsurf internet. It was like a full on sort of production, of like five minutes. Was it Josh Wilmot that made it? Black Cloud.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily see that as much anymore. Like people just put out kind of 15, 20-second sort of clips on sort of Instagram things. Do you think that's helping kind of riders, keep themselves relevant, or do you think the old way was better?
It's a tricky one because it's kind of like two sides to it, because within the windsurfing and specifically the freestyle, they're supporting freestylers as well because they see that, they're a good image for the brand and it looks radical. But a lot of what they have to do has to relate to sales. So from like a business point of view, you see it like they're not selling that much freestyle kit. Yeah. These brands like North and Fnac at the time are owned by bigger companies, and guys sitting around a desk in an office knowing, well, you're making this much money, you've sold this much kit, like look at your outgoings here with the team and stuff, you're going to have to cut some marketing costs, so they've definitely, like all the windsurf teams, I think, have really trimmed the fat, if you like, that period really of like the last 5 years. There's much smaller teams from all of the brands. I wasn't the only one to get cut at that point. And it's really hard to, I think, with the freestyle, when they can't see, there's not that many people into it, they're not selling loads of freestyle boards, it's hard to justify. Now, even if you can keep your personal brand alive through social media, that doesn't still resonate with, if a windsurfing brand's not selling many freestyle board products, why they're going to be the ones to sponsor you. So then you're in this awkward position where who is going to sponsor you? Even though you've got a good following on Instagram, you still need to be selling something for someone pretty much to get the support. And you're still at a level where you're not really those pro surfers at the WSL with hundreds of thousands of followers. Windsurfing's still quite niche, so your follower base doesn't really look that high. But
no, it's rare, to be honest. It's rare for windsurfers to have over 10k, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is really, isn't it? Because it's a bit of a niche. I mean, guys do, but
but I mean, only your real kind of top 5 wave sailors to me. And then there's a few other guys that have kind of found their little kind of niches within a niche, if you will. There's like Bows, for example, Bows Muller, who he's really jumped on the foiling and the new wing foiling sport, and he's developed his own niche. And then there's that Italian wave sailor who is just all about positive vibes as well. I find it a little bit overwhelming. There's too many emojis, But you know, he's found
It's more like influencer style, isn't it? Almost
Exactly.
a little bit what
yeah,
Federico.
that's a good way of saying it.
Like
Yeah.
there's like a wild personality who is just, yeah, it's so great. There's things like Instagram about, so everyone can just appreciate the best of Bowles, really, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've got so much time for the guy. He always to this day. I mean, you know, Bowles is easily one of the best windsurfers in the world. And I remember in Cape Town when we went out there, and obviously we'd hang out with you, and we all go to the lake, and you basically got the whole top 10 sailing in one place. And I always remember Bowles being, you know, other than yourself, Bowles being easily up there with probably the friendliest of them all, and probably the one with, you know, the most famous one, but maybe not results wise, but easily the most recognizable face. And he was always the friendliest. Even last year in Fuerta, I haven't seen him for a couple of years, and he sees me on the beach. He's walking down for his heat, and he's like, "Sandy, what?" He's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" You know?
Yeah.
You know, he's a real nice
great
guy.
I had a really cool opportunity earlier this year. Actually, I went to Switzerland to commentate for Yakla Positive Vibes. And I got to go. So Bowles was at the event, and Levi Sivers, obviously like someone who'd grown up like watching windsurf and absolute legend of the sport. So I was doing like behind the scenes coverage, and Yakla had invited Bowles and Levi out, and I had the opportunity to like hang out with those guys, go snowboarding with them, and like Bowles was doing mad stuff like with the sail attached to his board, and really cool weekend with those guys. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. It must be so cool to, especially, you know, for you, because you kind of came into windsurfing, like all things considered, you came into windsurfing really late, didn't you? You know, starting at kind of 16. You asked most of the other guys that were probably competing with you, they all probably started when they were 6 years old. And there's all that, you know, there's the beautiful story of their dad putting them on a board when they were 5 years old, and you know, taking them out in this. So it's pretty amazing that you've kind of done what you've done in such a short time.
It's a funny one. I was always told that as well when I was like 16, 17, and we were like had aspirations to, you know, like looking at the guys competing. All the other younger guys with us were like, "Oh, you're never going to get as good as those guys because they've been doing it since they're like 5 or 6 years old," you know. And you kind of also took that as a given as well sometimes at that age.
Do you think having I mean, I don't want to get too into it, but do you think having that kind of Club Vass backing really helped you with that? Obviously, you know, I remember speaking to some of the pros when we were in Cape Town, and they were like, "You guys that work in Vass have a way better life than all of us." They were like, "You don't have to compete. You still get really cheap gear. You get to spend 5 or 6 months in one of the best places in the world. All this." Do you think having not just the support network, but the opportunity to just, you know, be in Vass, do you think that kind of really helped accelerate you rather than having to just pay and go on 3-month trips to places?
Definitely, because I think it's easy to get like distracted, you know, if you're only like, we were in a windsurfing mecca in its own right, if you like. So you're kind of, it's all about windsurfing all the time. Whereas if you're back in, you know, like normal life and the people you meet every day today, not everyone knows about windsurfing. So you're not like in the bubble, and it's easy. You see a lot of guys like fall out of it, you know, like very talented sailors start competing and then kind of like dwindle off and do other stuff. And because you get other opportunities, it kind of keeps the focus pretty much windsurfing orientated, doesn't it, all the time out there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's literally the air that people breathe in Vass. It's what makes it such a magical place. If anyone hasn't been to Vass, then regardless of whether you windsurf or not, I highly recommend that you go. So, kind of wanting to you know move on a little bit. So it was Cape Town 2016. We were there when you go to Cape Town for the winter. So we were there 2016, 2017. And I remember you came up to me, I can't remember where we were, and you were like, "Oi, Sandy, I've got this weird lump on my stomach, feel it." And I was like, "What?" And you were like, "Poke this." You were like, "It feels like a tennis ball, doesn't it?" And I remember poking it, and I was like, "I've got no idea what that is, Max. I really don't know what that is." But I remember we were like, you didn't seem very concerned about it at the time. But
no, it's funny, like looking back, it's almost like embarrassing that I was a bit so blasé about it. But
very blasé about it.
But it was, I was being blasé about it to you guys and just letting you guys know about it, I guess, because it was on my mind a lot.
Yeah.
But I had like scans in the UK and like checks and seen a doctor and stuff, and I'd been reassured that it was nothing. I mean, the scan I had that year before I went to Cape Town, the guy told me that it was my stomach muscles, and I was like, "But it's not my stomach muscles." Like the first time I noticed it was after the summer in Vass. I'd been down to Cornwall and I'd been surfing, and I'm lying on my board, and I could feel something connecting with my board. I don't know, inside my stomach. It's hard. Not many people hopefully would have experienced that, but it was like, yeah, you could feel something inside. I could feel something under my stomach muscles connecting with the board that was almost like throwing me off balance, when I'm lying on my front. And that got me like poking around and like, oh, actually, hang on, there's quite like a very round, but like quite significant lump. And I saw a doctor that was like, yeah, that it does feel like some kind of abscess tumor first came about then.
Oh, mate, that must have been...
I already had Cape Town booked, so I rushed to get a ultrasound, was what they were prepared to do. At that point, rushed to get it done. It was in some dodgy car park in Clacton that just because it was the only appointment I could get. I think they were doing ultrasounds for pregnant women, and I managed to sneak in an appointment. And yeah, the guy was just threw it off like, no, it's just your stomach muscles, I assure you, don't worry. Yeah, I'm like, great, Cape Town it is, but in the back of my mind, I probably knew that there was something more serious going on,
more pressing. And then because I remember you being chilled about it, but I did if I try and say that I thought more about it at the time, then I'd be absolutely lying. I definitely didn't. But looking back on it now, do you think you were kind of saying that to almost kind of will it, like, saying it for yourself to be like, no, it's fine. Like, I can't imagine, your partner, your baby mama, Valerie, I can't imagine Valerie was, I'm sure she wanted you to get it checked out and get it fixed and stuff. Do you feel like you were putting a bit of a front up kind of for the boys, a little bit of like, oi,
Yeah, definitely. She was definitely on me to get it checked out, but I'd kind of done the ultrasound, and it was also the news you want to hear, you want to know that it's nothing. And especially when you got 3 months in Cape Town booked.
Well, then it's included that.
Yeah. So I definitely took it as the news I wanted to hear anyway, but really, I think deep down, I don't know. I was just kind of wanted people to know about it really, because it was like on my mind. And she was definitely like, oh, it's not normal. But he also doing it as like, has anyone else got anything like that? Or is that
is this weird? Is this just me? Or
then, I felt quite fine the whole time, really. I mean, looking back, I think I was like fatiguing easier, and just to like bring on the story a bit more, because it turned out like that winter that I then did a trip to Maui after Cape Town, but I had a doctor's appointment in between, and also like pushed again, like, what is it? And I saw a different doctor, and the guy felt around. He's like, I can't really feel anything. I'm like, what do you mean? It's there. And he's like, I wouldn't worry about it I was like, look, I'm pretty concerned about it. So I managed to push to get an appointment with a surgeon in the UK. And then but in the meantime, I went to Maui for a month or something. And there I was getting pretty worried about it. I was drinking all this kombucha, this fermented tea out there, thinking it was some like intestinal, like just blockage or something. I was drinking shit tons of coconut water and whatever else I could get.
Trying to flush your system out.
Apple cider vinegar, whatever I could. But knew it was pretty bad there, and I was probably feeling quite tired. And like looking back now, I'd also started eating quite light foods as well. I wasn't really eating heavy stuff. Got home, saw the surgeon, who also poked around and said he really didn't think it was much, and he thought it was more of a physio related issue. All right. So now it's already like the spring, and I'm in Austria at a competition in Neusiedler, say this time. The first time it was there instead of Poddersdorf, and there's this physio that I'd known who'd done some work on my ankle before, and there was a bit of downtime one day. Went to see him just because they said, oh, it's physio related. He felt it, and he was like, oh, it's a shame I don't have my ultrasound scanner with me, but bear with me, I want to take you to like the radiologist's unit in the town. I was like, okay. And I kind of phoned Valerie and was like, look, this guy, I don't know how serious he thinks it is, but he wants to take me to his radiologist place. Obviously she's Austrian, so she's wanted to kind of come along and be involved and hear what I had to say. And I was in this place about 10 minutes later. And 5 minutes later after that, they've got the ultrasound out, and they're pretty much telling me already then that I've got quite a significant sized tumor somewhere in my abdomen. And I was almost grateful, looking back now, so grateful to get the news there, because it was like 5 minutes later and I'm in a CT scanner. Like if I was in the UK, I don't think I would have like had that quick a turnaround. And of course, when you get the news you've got a tumor, you don't really like need moments to dwell on it to like find out how serious it is. It was already pretty serious, pretty quick. So they got me in a CT scanner to see like where it was attached to.
Yeah.
On what other organs were effective. And that was probably the scariest, like half an hour of the whole thing, actually. But
waiting.
Yeah, and it was only half an hour, people in that position often don't have half an hour, you get told that and you have to wait for scan results and get referred for your next appointment or whatever. So quickly after that, they could already tell me that, yes, I had like a really big tumor. It was like, at the time they were saying like 10 centimeters.
Oh.
And it was it's attached to the tissue that connects your intestine to the rest of your body in the mesentery tissue. Mm-hmm. And no other organs look infected, or your lymph nodes look fine. So it was already pretty reassuring and quite likely that it wasn't cancerous, because if it was that big and it was cancerous, then they would have been able to see it.
Been in trouble, yeah.
But it was still obviously a big question mark about what the hell it is, what's it doing there, and what and why, and it shouldn't really be. Yeah, you definitely need to get rid of it, kind of thing.
Fuck, that must have been. I think I remember you talking about it, but like that must be up there with your kind of scariest moments in your life, of when they first say it, and then even if it's just half an hour, if anything, that makes it worse, because you're probably just sitting in a waiting room, I guess, kind of twiddling your thumbs. Whereas I guess if it's a bit longer, it's kind of shit, because you've got to wait longer, but you can kind of just go, right, well, just go back to normal life. Maybe I can't decide which one would be better almost.
I don't know, in my mind, definitely getting it done quick is the thing to do, because you can't go back to normal life because it is on your mind,
Yeah, well, yeah,
I've been on my mind like already, like what if, worst case, and like obviously it'd been a big talking point with my parents and with Valerie, and we'd all been talking about it together, and talking about trusting the opinions I'd had from the doctors and trying to live off the positivity from that. But of course I was a bit concerned that it could be something much worse. But I mean, thankfully it turned out that it was just a benign lump. It's like a desmoid tumor. Now they can grow back, and actually, like where I had it grow, it turns out is quite a favorable place to have one. So it can grow like inside the muscles of your stomach wall and stuff, and then it's really miserable, and people end up still on like having chemotherapy and radiology to treat them, because it spreads so thinly. Like once it's in the muscle, it spread quite a lot, and people have like the whole stomach muscles like down one side removed to try and get rid of it, and still have to have chemo and radiology. So I was really fortunate where it was quite an easy snip to cut it out. But there was a bit of drama, of course, getting to that point with having it all cut out, and decided to stay in Austria after the care I'd got then, and was thankful that I managed to get it done on the European like health system at the time, because they deemed it to be something that needed to be removed.
I mean, I remember, I think I remember you, I don't know whether you announced it on social media or whether maybe I think we were in Vass by this point, weren't we? Because you were in Austria. So we'd have been in Vass, and I remember you, I don't know whether you either texted Ollie or did you kind of announce? I don't think you announced it on social media, did you? I think you maybe texted a few of us and said, look, this is happening.
I think I did like once. I can't remember if I announced it. Like I kind of felt the need to say something about it. Like once I kind of had a path in sight for having it removed, Yeah. And I knew that it was quite unlikely that it was cancerous and all of that. Yeah, I did announce it, but I definitely spoke to guys like Ollie beforehand.
I mean, it must have been, even obviously in terms of a prognosis or, whatever you call it, that's about as good as it gets given your situation. It's not cancerous, it's fine, but it must have still been pretty terrifying knowing, right, I'm going to have to get this thing taken out of me. And I mean, all I remember is you arriving in Vass in, I'll say late June or something like that. You turned up quite late that season. And I remember you arrived and you looked like a completely different human to the person I'm looking at right now in the camera. You must have been, I can't remember what you said, but you were so skinny and you were so pale, and you had this huge, I mean, this is not me being mean, but you had a huge scar up your chest. I mean, or on your kind of stomach and things. I mean, I mean, it's something so, I mean, thankfully it's something so far removed from my reality. So, I mean, what was that like? I mean, why did all that happen? Why did you lose all that weight and things? Was it just the sort of trauma of it, or could you not eat for a while?
Yeah, I could. So I couldn't eat because when they took it out, it ended up being like, I think it was like 17.5 centimeters, and it weighed nearly a kilo. So
Oh
it was a
my God.
mega lump and like entangled in the small intestine, which thankfully you have a lot of, but it was so entangled that they couldn't just take it out. They had to take out like 50 centimeters of the small intestine as well.
Right.
So yeah, couldn't eat for days afterwards, although I was so hungry. They said it was a good sign, but I was almost like prepared to steal a banana off the guy next to me when he fell asleep, like that kind of hungry. But yeah, and then I just, I couldn't lift anything with heavier than 5 kilos for 6 weeks with a scar like that. So it was pretty intrusive surgery, and they actually took out my gallbladder at the same time as well, because I had a small polyp in there. So
Right.
for that, I had to like reach, like lever up really hard and like go under the ribs.
Yeah.
To get it. So it was quite intrusive. And I don't know if I've ever shown you the pictures.
No, you haven't. Oh, maybe you have when we'd had a few beers, but I don't remember seeing them. But
yeah, like this cage fit, like my ribs were in agony for even months afterwards.
Yeah,
that I was fine again, and you realize because it's all like locked onto your rib cage and like levering you open from there. So
yeah.
It was a big surgery still. It was a big deal, and they still like tell you can't be too relaxed about it not being cancerous until they actually do a biopsy and get the results. And they didn't want to do a biopsy whilst it was still in there in case it then caused it to burst or spread around or.
Yeah.
So I was still waiting for the results of that, and really just bed bound, just lying in bed for 6 weeks. So yeah, I dropped like 10 kilos, I think it was. I was pretty gaunt, wasn't I?
Oh mate, it was crazy. I remember because I was eating my lunch. I was at the famous Vasiliki staff table, and I was at the staff table eating lunch, and I saw Valerie first, and I was like, "Oh, Max is here." And then I was like, that must be the driver or something. I was like, where is he? But yeah, I mean, it was crazy, but it was, again, it's one of those things. It's great with hindsight. I mean, how did you feel kind of weird after that? Like, were you a bit self-conscious of the way you looked and things like that? Or were you was there kind of more of a different perspective of actually, I'm just fucking stoked to be here?
Yeah, definitely not self-conscious really at all. I mean, it was more just it's like events like that just do bring you, sometimes it's a shame you need something like that to kind of like bring you back down to earth and realize how like fucking grateful you should just be for like every day, And it was definitely like one of those moments where you just like, well, actually everything's pretty fucking sweet, isn't it? Like couldn't care less really about having a scar or not being able to windsurf or doing whatever, It was all, yeah. It took something like that, but it was just, it was, good. I think of it like looking back, like afterwards, like good times, really. I mean, there was a bit of a scare, like, so that summer, whilst I was still in Vass, there's a bit of a question mark, like, why you have that type of tumor. It can be related to this condition where you have a lot of polyps in your colon.
Yeah.
So I still had to, and I decided not, because I'd had the surgery, just started feeling good. I didn't want to go back to the UK for the colonoscopy and deal with all of that in the middle of the summer. I wanted to enjoy the Vass season. So I made the call to wait until the end of the summer to do that.
Yeah.
So, I was still living with a little bit of like, because that's also quite a life-changing condition, if I'd have found out I had that. So I'm still kind of living with a little bit of like, I hope it's not that, but at the same time, just being like, just grateful for everything, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is interesting you say that. I mean, in the context of when we're recording this at the end of the fucking shittest year in our lifetimes anyway, and I think I don't want to talk about, COVID and stuff too much, but I think that's kind of given us all a little bit of that kind of perspective that you were given then of actually how good was it just to be able to go and sit in a pub with your mates, or how lovely was it to go and enjoy a movie in the cinema, or, all that sort of stuff that we've been denied this year. So I think we've all been dealt a bit of dose of perspective, and I think you're right. I think it's such an important thing to have. But often it comes out of something really shit happening,
Yeah, no, it does. It's just taking stuff for granted, isn't it?
Yeah. And I remember you, like, I mean, there's a brilliant video. I'll put it up when I post this podcast, but one of your, was it done with Sun God, or was it just done with our friend Miles, who's it was with Sun God, and Miles made the clip from that summer. Yeah, so Sun God, who you know, it'd be interesting to chat to you a little bit about Sun God. But Sun God are a sunglass brand, and they've become really, really big. And you've kind of been there since the real early doors of that brand. You know, you're still one of their main kind of, you know, athletes today, and you know, very much the face of the brand for looking at it. You know, for me. But they produced a clip with our friend Miles of kind of you talking about you know, this all of this that happened to you, and it was done in Vass, and it, you know, they showed the first time you went back out windsurfing again and all that stuff, and it was really cool. I guess that must have been a really great moment for you, kind of making that clip.
Yeah, it was it's funny because it was almost like, looking at it now, it was quite soon to be like talking about it in that light, you know, because it wasn't really like all over and done and recovered by then. It was still like very early on in it. But at that point, you know, you're quite emotional about the whole thing, because then you're really like feeling that perspective pretty hard, you know, and just grateful for family and people around you and all your mates and stuff. So I haven't watched it back for quite a long time, but yeah, those were special moments. Like I remember the first session, and I think I windsurfed like around my birthday that year for the first time.
I swear in my brain, I think it was your birthday.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think you just went foiling, didn't you? I think.
No, I was on maybe I did go. I think I was on a 4.4 and a Blast 100 though. And
no, you were. That was it. Yeah, that was it. I was going to say you definitely weren't on your freestyle kit. I remember that.
No, I couldn't let myself. But
yeah, actually, I remember you said to me, you were like, "I'll just do a shaka. I won't be able to not do it."
Yeah, because I could, but actually I couldn't have done it. It was really good not to, because the stomach muscles take a long time to heal. You know, once.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I tried to do a few chop hops, but I just couldn't lift my legs aggressively enough. So.
Yeah. No,
no strength there to even pull my legs up, really. So it was already a push to be windsurfing, I think.
Yeah.
But I did try and do my best to take it easy for a while with that one, because I'd had enough injuries, so I'd rushed back from that had gone the other way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then, you know, at the end of the tour that year, which I think is, you know, sort of a very, you know, end of September, early October time, you ended up actually competing in the last event of that year as well. So I think you kind of rounded it out quite well, I suppose. No,
yeah, it went all right, because I had the colonoscopy booked for like the week before I was going to Silt to compete in the final world tour stop, and yeah, it was like still like, you know, also in my early years with Simmer, so you know, they supporting me. I'm on a 3-year deal, and then all of a sudden I've got this serious condition potentially, and couldn't attend any events, and so I really wanted to do it. I felt a bit of pressure to do it. And I had the colonoscopy a few days before I went and got the all clear and all good from that. So managed to go to Silt on a bit of a high that it was all good, really. And I was just going to get 6 monthly scans. But, you know, even if it did grow back, it was going to be like a watch and wait kind of thing. And since then it hasn't grown back. But even if it did, like in the past, when it was growing, I wasn't in much pain. So I was always quite fortunate with it. So.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's kind of compounded on top of that. You're almost, I don't know, you were a bit worried about like what we were saying earlier about your career of like, fuck, are Simmer actually going to turn around and say, look, you know, we really like you and everything's great, but you're not exactly doing much at the moment. It's cool that they kind of kept you. I mean, it would have been pretty shit if they'd got, you know, if they'd canned you because of that, wouldn't it? But
it would have been slightly different circumstances.
I think you could have had a bit of a go. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, moving on to a slightly less, but still very concerning health issue. And it's something that myself and both you struggle with. And it's definitely a bit of a taboo subject. I talk about it a lot. And that is losing your fucking hair. And I talk about it a lot. I wanna talk to you about it. We've had
a lot of banter about this over the years. Anyway.
We've had a lot of banter. Me and you have both done Speed Week for a few years with a guy called Dave White, who's an absolute titan of the windsurf industry, both literally and figuratively. Sorry, Whitey, but he's a real legend. He actually suffered a stroke a few years ago. But he's a real hero, and he's an sort of world speed record holder, and he does a thing in Vass every year called Speed Week. And me and you always used to do it. And I remember there always used to be the joke of like, "Oh no, I didn't want to go faster than you. My hair was going to blow off," you know.
Yeah. No, I think it's good that we've been quite open about it. But like you say, I've had harder times with it than others.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think it's one of those things. The big thing for me, and I mean, you know, you've always had long hair. I mean, I had long hair on my first season at Club Vass, and then I cut it all off. I don't really know why I cut it off, but then I just started having. I always had kind of, you know, medium short hair, we'll say, and now I gloriously rock a buzz cut, which breaks my heart every day I look at it, but I'm getting used to it.
I'm still hanging on to the long hair, mate. I'm still.
Yeah, so we've both gone down two very different routes with it. You're still holding on, and I'm not saying my one's better, but I've shall we say embraced it a little bit more, whereas you're sort of holding on to it. But I think getting into like the actual psychological thing behind it, and I think for men that it's not happening to, and for women, I genuinely don't think they quite understand. Like for a while, it really like beat me up. I think it was 2017/18 before I shaved my head and had the buzz cut. Since then, I've kind of made peace with it. And actually, a lot of people are like, do you know what? You actually look, you know, you really suit that hairstyle and all this. So I'm like, well, it's not going to look any different when I'm bald then. But I think before that, it really kind of beat me up. And because I've always had this identity of being a windsurfer and, you know, surfing, I've always had a tan and all this stuff and all this. I was kind of worried of losing that because suddenly I don't have this beautiful head of blonde hair anymore to go along with it. I mean, is that something that you kind of, is that the bit which you've struggled with, or
definitely feel like it's kind of like an identity thing, don't you? I've always had quite like sticky out pointy ears as well, so it's like a great way to like shield those things from the sun as well.
Wing nuts.
Take the edge off them getting burnt at the back and the top. So it's been good for that. But you do feel hard done by, I'd say, has been my feeling with it. And when you look in pictures, it's like, especially windsurfing and certain angles of pictures you see, like when I look at myself on like some of the Fanatic North shoots from 2016 in Maui, even compared to like the year or two later, like how wispy it all of a sudden gets. Like there's not a lot of hiding it when you're in the water.
No, especially when you
start to get a little bit sunburned through there as well. But
dude, I have to put sun cream on my head now.
Yeah, I've managed to get a little bit of life back with the old regain.
Yeah, you told me about this. That's interesting. But I read a thing saying that it apparently it only lasts for it's only effective for 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm a year in, so I'm all right. But I'm not like doing it religiously, but I kind of let Valerie, my girlfriend, as my gauge on this, is that because I've proposed like, right, I'm ready to go short hair, chop it all off. And she's been the one like, no, it's not that bad yet. You can hang on to it. So maybe I will look back in the future and go, ask her what the hell she was going on about. But I still think I've got just enough to blag it with my new little tufts that I'm getting from the regain spray in there.
I mean, it's, you know, it's one of those things, and it's funny. I remember in like 2015, 2016, I was looking at my hair and I was like, oh, it's really, really bad. Oh no. And then I look at it now and I'm like, I literally had a full head of hair.
Yeah.
And then this weekend just gone, I was on the South Coast. I was with our friend James Hoare, and we were windsurfing together and stuff. And I saw James, and I was just chatting to James about it all and all this. And James was like, if I looked at you, I wouldn't even think you were losing your hair. I just think you had really short hair.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of it is definitely in our brains rather than, and I think once you're losing your hair, you notice it way more in other people as well. Like I watch films now that I watched when I was a kid, and I look at them and I'm like, oh, he's bald. He's bald. I'm like, oh, I want to see him again, see how much hair he's got. You know, and
You've been watching a lot of Jason Statham movies, have you?
Well, yeah, I've just finished 5 seasons of Ballers, and pretty much everyone in it is bald, and they're also really cool. So I'm like, oh, maybe I'll be all right. But
I think what's funny is that we always had like people to chat about it with as well, like me, you, and Pip famously as well, our mate, who's also balding quite seriously on the back of his head. So we always had like he's got the worst deal there. I think that's the worst one. Is having the helicopter landing pad on the back of your head. Like me and you are very similar. I think we're just general thinning, which is kind of good. Like, you know, you can kind of hide that. Thankfully, like Sun God are very happy with pictures of me wearing a cap and sunny, so it's worked out all right for that deal.
Yeah, exactly. Your modelling career is still going. But I mean, did that? You when I was saying we were joking on Speed Week, that was the year before you had this kind of cancer scare and the tumor and stuff. That was 2017. You had your tumor scare. and this is maybe getting a bit deep and maybe you didn't necessarily think about it, but did the perspective of that happening make you kind of think, oh, do you know what? If I do lose my hair, it probably doesn't actually matter that much, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Like that kind of thing is a good reminder. Like you can still feel hard done by about it occasionally, I think. But yeah.
Oh, mate, for sure. I hate it when people are like, when people come along and oh, well, you're hungry. Well, there's people starving in Africa. And it's like, what relevance does that have to what I'm trying to do now? Just because I'm not suffering as badly as someone else doesn't mean I can't be suffering. I think that kind of attitude really fucking pisses me off. But I guess when it's both of those things that have happened to you personally, it's interesting. I'm very fortunate so far. I've not had any, personal kind of health crisis. Well, I had a bit of a bad time mentally, but that's why I'm here doing this podcast. But physically, that's not happened. Other than the fact that I'm losing my hair, I feel like I've done quite well so far. But also because I'm so tall, people can't see the top of my head. You see, so yeah.
And you look good in a cap as well, mate. So
that's it, mate. Yeah, exactly. As long as you've got nice hats. This is the thing. I spent 40 quid on this hat, but you got a nice hat. People don't mind, mate. People don't mind. Yeah. No, I think if you're to anyone out there who is starting to lose their hair, just don't worry about it. There's plenty of good looking bald men out there, and especially me and you've now got a baby mama. I've got a long-term girlfriend, and I remember Heidi at the very beginning when we were chatting and stuff before we were together. She was like, "Oh, I really fancy bald men," so I was like, "Oh, I think I'll be all right then."
Yeah. You've got it. I think that having that as well, that kind of relationship security, like I think I would have been more bothered about it as well. Like if I was looking at the prospect of dating life, if you like, with going bald as well. But I think it is something you kind of come to terms with. I've been quite lucky that it's been a gradual kind of fitting, so I've had a while to get my head around it as well. Yeah,
me too. There is a big stigma attached to it, but I think generally, from what I've found, the people that care more about it than anyone else is yourself and other men. Women do not give a shit. They really don't care whether, and as you said, luckily we're in relationships and stuff like that, but usually women don't care. If anything, they probably find it attractive. But you look at look at our friend Ed, who has the most fertile head of hair I've ever seen on a man, And I'm like, can I just have like a little bit of yours, please?
You can't help but be a bit jealous, can you? Especially when it grows so well still, like anywhere just except from that like top front bit. That's a painful bit, isn't it?
Yeah, as soon as you get an island anywhere, you need that's when you need to start thinking about taking.
Maybe the comb over will come back into fashion though. You never know. That's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have watched a few like period movies recently of the comb over. Yours isn't quite a comb over yet. You've still got a bit of, you're not combing completely from one side to the other. So I think you're all right, mate. I think you're all right.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Yes, mate.
Okay, I'll keep you updated with how it goes, but I'm hoping to keep it going for a little bit longer.
Yeah, mate. I think you've got at least another year. But I think once you
just for the sun protection as well, I'm like, otherwise I'm going to be in one of those bucket hats with a chin strap on.
Oh yeah. You have a slightly paler complexion compared to I tan quite well. You're not much of a tanner, are you? So
no, I'm a bit pastier.
Yeah, you are. Kind of last sort of subject I want to get into before we do the sort of quick fire stuff. Going on to something. I said at the beginning, you've become a dad this year. First of all, congratulations. I've met Lola. She's lovely. She's already got more hair than you.
But yeah, I've heard that one a few times.
Yeah, I think I've said that one to you a few times. But I mean, how I'm really interested to chat to you about this because I didn't really get a chance to talk to you when we were in Vass because obviously, social distancing and all that stuff. I know Valerie was being quite careful with Lola, with all of us flying out and back and all that stuff. So I didn't really get to talk to you a lot about it. And you were very busy. But for you coming from that kind of season air, professional, water sports athlete, kind of that carefree traveling lifestyle. What was it like when you first found out you were having a kid? Compared to now when you've actually got a kid, what is that like?
It was crazy kind of whirlwind really, because it wasn't I'm not going to say, we both obviously done biology lessons at school, but I'm not going to say we'd like absolutely planned it that we were going to have decided that we were going to have a baby. So it did come as a bit of a surprise, even though we knew what we were doing, if you know what I mean. But then obviously then it gets serious quite quickly because there's so many considerations straight away, you know, like, and then you kind of, your head goes into gear with thinking about all the stuff that you're going to need, that you need to sort out, like how it's going to affect your lifestyle. And we were always quite keen from the beginning that we weren't going to let it change our, like, what we enjoy doing and being able to travel and stuff. And now actually with the year that's just happened, we haven't, you know, really had a chance, except for going to Greece for the summer, because that's effectively where we live in the summers. Except for the traveling there, we haven't really been able to like maintain the lifestyle that we wanted to. In a way, she came around at a great time. It was like just before lockdown got really serious, so you're still allowed in the hospitals and stuff. Like a few weeks after she was born, like the partners in Austria were only allowed to be there for the birth, and then they had to leave. That was it. You know, there was really strict guidelines in place, so it came at quite a good time. And my family just managed to make it over to see her before the lockdowns kicked in as well. So we obviously got that out of the way. That would have been like really tough to swallow if they couldn't have met her early on. And then having her through that period, like it was great because we had the perfect distraction, really.
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, I remember saying that to you. I said it must have felt, because you sent me a picture of when she was born and stuff, and I think it was just before lockdown happened here. But then I said in Vass, like it must have literally been absolutely ideal. Of like, right, neither of us are working. We're both, you know, everyone's stuck at home, and I guess it's probably one of those things that you'll look back on all throughout, you know, your life and Lola's life now, and be like, how nice was that when she was born, that we both got to just spend all this time with her. And even, you know, throughout the summer, like I know, you know, Vass was very busy, but there was still less going on, and you know, there wasn't as much, you know, there was no parties in the evening and all that. So you didn't feel that like disconnect from everyone else, because it wasn't like, oh, we better leave the party early, because those parties weren't even happening.
No, it definitely worked in our favor that way. That is for sure. I mean, it was a bit of a jump to, like, obviously the route to Vass wasn't as normal as it could have been, and we were, you know, we couldn't. We were committed to driving. We couldn't go via Italy, so we had to drive the long way through Croatia, Serbia, Bulgaria.
Oh damn!
To Greece that way, which was like 3 full-on days of driving. So it was already then. We were like, you know, you're weighing up beforehand, like, can you do that journey with a baby? She's only, what was she? She would have been like 3 months old at the time. But really, we were like, you know, these are the kind of, that's what we want to do. That's our life. We're going to do it. I remember I was chatting about it recently. There's one moment where we're like feeding her. We're in some service station on the outskirts of Belgrade, and you're questioning if you're a good parent or not. Yeah. But actually, like, really grateful that we of course did it, and just to trying to carry on living our lives, but with her about. But of course, it's a change of pace, and instantly, even in those first few months, it's very, very full on having a young baby to look after, and the sense of responsibility that you feel, and all of that. But of course, incredible memories that you're just creating all the time. Yeah. So
I guess is it kind of, you know, already you had such a huge like perspective shift 3 years ago with the cancer scare. I mean, this must have, you know, everyone says it completely changes, you know, who you are and what your outlook is. I mean, would you say that's true? Like, do you look at life definitely in a kind of bit of a different way now? Or I know you said you want to keep living that lifestyle that you already had. But do you kind of look at, you know, certain things differently now that you're like, well, actually, you know, I've got this human to look after?
Probably too soon to say, I think. Like, I don't know if I do. I mean, you've definitely got more on your plate all the time. So you always got this extra, like, you know, you struggle for those moments to like switch off and sit down, watch something, you know, like that time. So you're definitely like more alert and going through stuff. I wouldn't say I look at anything like too differently, still like to do exactly the same things, and similar aspirations as before. But I mean, it's kind of like, one factor with it is you're looking at, in 5 years, she's going to need to go to school.
Yeah.
So you've actually got like a bit of a structure, clock ticking.
Yeah.
through, like, where are you going to then base yourselves? You know, we've been fortunate enough that we've just been able to drop in and out of our parents the last year, so we haven't, which has allowed us to travel when we're not in Greece, you know, and that gets a little bit more tricky when you've got a baby with you, and just like also you appreciate a bit more of your own space. So you're kind of looking at your lifestyle, like, do you need to then commit to having a base somewhere? Yeah, of course she's going to need to go to school in 5 years anyway, so where do we want to do that? You know, like, are we going to do that in Austria? Are we going to do that in England? Are we going to do that in Greece? Like, all questions that need to like come out at some point before then. So I'm definitely looking at it as well, though, like a bit of a clock, like, right, we can still travel and do whatever we want in the winter, where can we go? And now we're looking at it like, right, we don't have a base, we're still set up to travel, but we can't really go anywhere, and we're a little bit stuck, you know. I mean, I'm sure we'll still be able to get away somewhere this winter, but it wasn't quite what we envisaged. You know, we would have liked to have been in Cape Town now this time of year, and something like that.
I guess it's so difficult to really judge what it's going to be like, because the world's so kind of upside down at the moment anyway, isn't it? You know, it's kind of good and bad bits, because you can't really settle into life like as a 3 anymore at the moment, can you? Because you're still kind of unsure of what that life is going to be like, you know? But it must,
a lot of uncertainty, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, but it must be crazy. I mean, you're, you know, for my sort of, you know, generation of people doing seasons and all that, you're kind of the first one that's had a kid. So I've been, you know, myself, and I'm sure, you know, other people as well have been really kind of intrigued to know, like, you know, just sort of what it's like to go from, you know, pretty much the most carefree lifestyle there is, to suddenly, fuck, I've got this thing I need to look after, you know, all the time. But actually, I guess it's interesting what you say about, you know, you kind of know in 5 years, and you can kind of look at that, you know, negatively and positively. You know, it kind of, like you said, it gives you go, right, actually, we've got 4 years to go and do everything, you know, we wanted. Let's take her to Maui. Let's go and, you know, anywhere. And then you kind of start, you know, that next chapter, sort of whatever it is. So I guess it's kind of nice in a way. So I know some people like it, some people hate it, actually having like a bit of a plan and something to, you know, move towards.
It's definitely given us like a bug that we need to get on with it and do some more traveling whilst we're free, because until she needs to go to school, we are actually pretty free still, you know. There's a lot of like how I think people are scared of like how much routine babies need, and needing this and that and a set spot. But we were always told by a lot of like similar minds and people that we've been, you know, got to know through Club Vass that have had kids, that actually they just, you know, they need their parents to be there, and then they can actually be wherever, you know, as long as you're looking after them and they're with you, then they're going to be great. So it was like reassuring to connect with people as well that we knew that had kids.
That must be nice, because I guess, you know, there must be a bit of like did you have that kind of confidence thing in the start of like, fuck, can I actually do this? Or, you know, were you like, nah, you've always been quite I don't want to say like super confident, but you've always been pretty sure of yourself, you know, whether it's like we chatted, you know, whether it's your windsurf career or anything, you know, for me, knowing you've always seemed really sure of yourself. Do you think, did you carry that into, you know, having a kid as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously you have doubts like anything, but really the overwhelming side of it is, well, holy fuck, you've got to do your best now. You've got absolutely more than ever, you've got to be confident. You've got to make it all work, you know. So
exactly.
That definitely drives a bit of pressure onto yourself as well. But it was, mostly like a whole like exciting kind of process, you know, and it gives you like a real sense of purpose as well.
Well, that must, you know, especially throughout, it's something I say on a lot of the podcasts, you know, especially throughout this year. I think the reason a lot of people have suffered, you know, mentally and things is because they have a lack of purpose, you know. And I think this podcast in a way has really, really saved me this year, because whilst my work has been really up and down, this podcast has been constant. Like I've done at least one episode a week, pretty much every week this year, you know. So it's same thing, you know. Obviously my podcast, I'm not comparing my podcast to your child at all, but
no, but
you know what I mean. Having a
focus,
exactly. Yeah, I think that's really, really valuable, and really, you know, really, really, really great to have.
Just grateful that you don't have your focus at 3 different periods throughout the night, 2 a.m. and 4:30.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like the worst bit. I mean, I do like my sleep. I even find myself getting frustrated at the moment if I need to get up and go for a wee in the middle of the night, let alone go and change a child. You know.
No, we've been very lucky. She slept through like the whole summer we were in Greece. She was sleeping like through the night in her bed. So we got it pretty lucky, really. It's changing a little bit now, and with the teething and everything, it is adjusting. We're definitely awake a lot more.
Yeah.
Not for too many extended periods, but yeah, I think it would have been a real struggle this summer working like the season lifestyle. And then, you know, I'm not saying it's a mega stressful or busy job, but it's just full on when you're like 6 days a week, you're in the sun.
It's not necessarily full on. You know, this is something I've said in you know, I did a podcast with our friends Laura and Emily, and we chatted about season and stuff. And something that always really fucked me off was people going, when are you going to get a real job then? You know, and it's like, well, you don't quite appreciate, if you're saying that to me, you really don't appreciate how much work we all actually put in for you to have this lovely holiday, you know. And it's maybe not the most serious job in the world, but it's definitely full on. And I think, like I said, I think it's almost really great that you had this year where it maybe, I know you had a lot less staff, but there wasn't the big parties. You weren't planning all that sort of extracurricular side of it. You know, you could very much get in, sort of do your lessons, all that stuff, and in the evening you're like, right, I've got this time.
Yeah, no, that was great. But yeah, you're still like, you know, on top of those full-on days, I'm up like at 8 o'clock in the morning. Valerie's teaching Pilates twice a week, so you're doing all the prepping, all the stuff for the day, like every day before you're going to work. So you're full on for like 2 hours afterwards, and of course all the extra stuff in the evening. So if you then were not sleeping on top of that, it would have been like, it would have been really tough, I think. And I'm just someone that if I'm not sleeping, then I'm just going to be getting frustrated. I'm going to be taking it out on people. So I was really grateful that I didn't have any of that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it's super. Yeah, I think it's there's good and bad bits, I suppose, isn't there? You know, the bad bits, I'd say the good far outweighs the bad, I think.
There's challenges.
That's a better way of saying it. That's a better way.
It's very full on in its own right, you know.
Full-time job, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So to kind of finish up then, I've always got my kind of few questions that I like to sort of ask my guests. So where is your happy place? So you've done a lot of traveling. Click your fingers right now. Where are you?
Vasiliki.
Yeah. Nice. I thought you were going to say that. Yeah, every time.
There's a few happy places, but that's the overriding one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it on pretty much every podcast when I ask someone this. It's also, to be at that beach bar after a day of windsurfing with all your mates, and there's nowhere better on this earth, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's
pretty simple, isn't it?
I mean, this is a question. Usually, everyone's got some good answers to this, but as we've just discussed, you've been fairly busy over the last year. But you know, during lockdown, I'm just going to do the usual spiel, and then we can talk about it. But during lockdown, we've all had a lot more sort of time on our hands, so we've all been watching a lot more kind of TV and movies and things. You know, I guess for you, other than watching, you know, Dora the Explorer and Paw Patrol, have you been watching anything good, or is it literally you just been caught up with looking after Lola?
I'd highly recommend the Wheels on the Bus Coco Melon edition that is on YouTube. It's only 3 minutes of your day.
Right.
You can watch it up to 10 times, and it is very catchy.
Yeah, I bet.
We were very grateful in September, October, once the season did wind down a bit and we're in Vass. We watched a few seasons. I think we watched the new season of You. That was my favourite so far.
Oh yeah, I watched that this year, and it's a pretty mental TV show, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? We haven't managed many though, so I'm definitely not got good suggestions on that front.
No, that's fine, mate. You've been busy. Something that you will have good suggestions on. I know that you also like a beer. You like a little sip of the amber nectar. Hit me with some recommendations. I was saying at the beginning, big huge thanks to our friend Ollie, Mr. Ollie Scott, who is the general manager at Club Vass. He sent me a mixed crate of Camden beers. So while we've been having this, I've had the weeknight any day lager, which is very new. It's very light. It's a bit like a Castle Light.
Is it? How strong is it?
3%, mate. 3%.
Yeah.
Nice. Weeknight. But what beers have you been drinking? Obviously, you spend a lot of time in Austria as well, so you've probably got some good stuff.
Actually, I'd say my favourite beer at the moment is hands down from Austria. The local Salzburg beer is Stiegel, the gold brow, and they're actually quite like environmentally focused. So they're not like shipping worldwide, really. A lot of the production that they do seems to be in like refillable bottles.
Yeah.
So, you know, you buy your crate and you pay a deposit on the bottles. They do cans and stuff as well, but it's amazing like how it's not really available even outside of Austria. I don't think I've ever seen it, but it is really, if you're ever in Austria and they're snowboarding, the Stiegel is top notch.
Nice.
It has been good to get back to the Brewdog beers as well. I'm actually drinking now. I've got one I haven't drunk until the other day, which Hazy Jane, which is a New England IPA. I love the punks, so this was a nice little mix up on that. Big fan of them.
Yeah, I like a Brewdog. I sent the guys at Brewdog and Camden an email about sponsoring this podcast. So if you're listening, can you please send me some beers? That would be very nice. All this talking is very thirsty work.
I bet it is.
But yeah, cool. All right then, guys. That was my final episode of 2020. Thank you so much, Max, for coming on. Thank you for talking about all those things. I mean, it's been a hell of a journey for you. But I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing you in 3D at some point next year.
Very good to catch up, and thank you for having me on. And going to really look forward to back listening to some of the ones I've missed and catching up with the ones that you're going to do new in the new year. So keep up the good work, mate.
Yeah. So those of you out there listening, thank you so much.
So there we go, a really interesting podcast there. Like I say, talking about a lot of windsurfing, but an underlying mental health issues and the stresses and stuff of being a pro windsurfer and just being a bloke in general. If you liked it, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to give us a like. But I say the comments are really useful. We get to hear what you guys at home are thinking. If you like more of that sort of stuff, we can do it. Sandy does have his own channel, and I'll put all the links to his channel below. But we might showcase a few more podcasts if it goes down well. So thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you've not already subscribed, and I'll stick other links to other podcasts if you've not heard them. And let's see what next week brings.